you all. Good to be back, freshly back from the Kinnos. I'll share with you a few thoughts before I begin today's topic, which is the Hasidic Renaissance and the great debates that took place then. And one of the ideas I want to tell you was that 2 weeks ago, I spent Friday night in Australia. And I have regards to you from some of the former members who used to come here, particularly Esther Basson. I walked into the shul, and she's waving to me from the Ezras Nashim, from the ladies' gallery on top at the Central Chabad Shul in Melbourne. And then there were other people who came over to me. I feel like I'm the one who's getting old here because a few people looked at me. Hello, Rabbi Kievman. I'm like, just remind me. I don't remember their names. They remember mine. It's embarrassing. And one guy takes off his glasses. I'm like, please remind me. And I'm reminded by this. Chief Rabbi Sachs, he was here in Joburg, of blessed memory, his yahrzeit was 2 weeks ago. And he was here for the centennial, the 100th year anniversary of the Great Park Shul, the former Walmart Street Shul. And when he was there, he gave a talk that I used to be involved at the Great Park Shul. My wife's uncle's the rabbi, Rabbi Chazdan. So we were there, and Rabbi Sachs asked the audience, what do you think is the most commonly asked question he gets as the chief rabbi of Great Britain, or as the former chief rabbi? What do you think it would be? Pardon? Something to do with the royal family. Maybe. Has he met the queen? Ooh, you guys are good. Do you remember me? Do you remember me? I thought it would be something theological. I thought it would be something philosophical. I thought it would be something of religious nature. Do you remember me? That, he said, was the most common question he gets asked. Do you remember me? And I was embarrassed that I didn't remember some of these people. But I'm still very touched that the people remembered me. So thank God for that. But when I came to shul on Friday evening, for an hour before Shabbos, they had this huge event. Anyone ever been to Melbourne? If you know where the Chabad Shul is in the center, it's in South Caulfield. So it's a Chabad Shul. It's called the Central Shul, and outside it there's a park called Princess Park. And in that park, they had a huge event, a concert, and it was impressive. They had singers, they had cantors. They said prayers. It was a very special and impressive event to be at. And after that, everybody came to the shul. And the shul was not full. I saw videos of this Shabbos, and the shul was full this Shabbos. But it was very nice being there. And then after the event, I don't know, some people were there. People said hello. It was quite nice. And it was Lebedik. It was very special. I'm told that a week later, the shul got attacked by pro-Hamas protesters. So this Shabbos, there were videos out about the special service they had with music and singing and dancing, of course not on Shabbos, but before Shabbos. And a lot of people came, and the video looked like the shul was full. So it was very nice to see that. I have to say, on the one hand, I experienced anti-Semitism in the middle of my niece's wedding in Melbourne at the Yeshiva College campus. There were people shouting slogans, Free Palestine, from the river to the sea, and those things, which we know what they mean when they say it. And it is purely anti-Semitic. I don't know from whom. People were shouting it. At the same time, I went with my family to the Royal Botanical Gardens in Melbourne. And we also experienced the opposite of that, where people came to us saying they're so sorry about what's happened. And when I was flying back to when I was flying back to the US, I flew through Dubai. I was going for the Kinnos HaShluchim, for the International Conference of Chabad Rabbis. And in the airport, in Dubai, a Muslim-looking man to me, he's escorting us through security, checking our bags, and you have to take your computer out or whatever they do. And he says to me, I'm so sorry what happened to your people. Not only that, he says, Israel must finish them off. They're giving us a bad name. Those were his words to me. They're giving us a bad name. Okay, I'm assuming he was a Muslim who was sympathizing with us in Dubai and telling me that Israel must finish them off. Look, if you ask me, and I look at the letters of the Rebbe's care was for every citizen in Israel, not only the Jewish ones. And he said it very clearly that Israel has to have firm security for the well-being of all people. So it's sad when we see innocent Palestinian kids who are unfortunately part of the collateral damage. But no doubt it is Hamas who's at fault for their deaths when they put children as their human shields for their atrocious behaviors, where they're hiding our hostages, where they have to know very simply, release our hostages, surrender and end their terror, and there'll be an end. And you see from the Rebbe's letters, his concern was for all. But Israel has to stand firm and strong to defend and protect its citizens. And when they do so, then we in South Africa and Jews all over the world are protected as well. Israel's the beating heart of the world. And I saw something interesting. Have any of you watched the Kinos video to watch the actual banquet? So we had a full weekend of conferences, of classes. And I have to say this year, they toned it down very much. Maybe it had to do, most likely it had to do with the situation in Israel. So it wasn't as extravagant as it usually is. Usually they sort of spoil all the rabbis for 6 days. And this year I felt that they tried to spoil us a little less. They didn't give away all these freebies they usually do. Always all these types of gifts and goodies. And maybe the meals were toned down a little bit. But some of these things were good. For example, they moved, usually the conference, the convention, the sessions, the workshops, the lectures all take place at a convention center, sometimes in Brooklyn, sometimes out of Brooklyn. We have to get on buses and go there. And there's a reason, there's a benefit to it. Even locally, when they do the South African Rabbinic Conference, they try not to keep it local. Why? What happens when you're local in Joburg? You get a phone call, somebody wants to see us, and we're not paying attention. We're not focused to the conference itself. There's all types of distractions that are pulling us in different directions. But when you go off to Durban or Cape Town or Kruger or Israel for the Rabbinic Conference, what happens? You are hopefully present. You're focused. In fact, I was invited with, I think, most expenses paid to a conference on geriatric care and caring for the elderly in Israel. It's supposed to take place in December. And I was very torn because December is my kids' holiday. It's a time I get to spend a little bit more time with them. B, I was just overseas for 2 weeks. I can't just go to this conference in Israel. On the other hand, how often does it happen that you get paid, by the way, this was all pre-October 7th. I knew I was going to this trip for my niece's wedding and for the Shluchim conference. I will throw in something else interesting before I get back to that. Always when I travel somewhere, I find that I go for one simcha and somehow the simchas are extended. Maybe that's what happens when you're a big family. So what happened when I went to Australia, I went for my niece's wedding. And I discovered that it was another relative's wedding as well while I was there. Not my cousin, but my cousin's cousin, but I knew them well. Whenever I used to go to Israel for family simchas, this guy, Eli Soloveitchik, was one who I used to spend time with. So I said, if I'm in Australia, I'm not going to miss his wedding. And I had an extra simcha to be at as well. Then when I get to New York, I had 2 more simchas that I didn't know about. One was the engagement of a nephew. And the second one was the birth of another nephew. So, and I didn't get to stay for the bris, unfortunately. I tried. It meant I would have had to arrive Friday afternoon, and I would not risk that. Then I don't know if I would still, if I'd be here or spend Shabbos in Dubai. And to arrive Friday morning, which is another option with the airline I was flying, Emirates, was not an option. They were sold out. That's so they said. They put me on standby. But I didn't want to risk coming in an hour or 2 before Shabbos, and that wouldn't have been so pleasant. Hence, I was back already by Thursday. So that was just a side note how when it rains, it pours. Please God, it should always rain and pour with simchas and happy occasions. I thought I'm going to Australia for Anissa's wedding and America for a rabbinic conference. I wound up going to Australia for 2 weddings, Sheva Brachas, and I'm meeting with friends and seeing the Jewish Care Center there. By the way, it's incredible to see what they have. I was always impressed with our Chaber Kadisha, but I think they got a little bit of a stiff competition in Melbourne, the Jewish Care Organization. Very impressive retirement facilities that they have there. So what does it tell me? Not that our Chaber Kadisha is doing incredible work, but it's telling me also is that other Jewish organizations around the world do incredible work as well. And we as a Jewish community are very lucky and privileged because almost any community you go to in the world, there are incredible Jewish organizations that are doing a lot for our Jewish community. And we're unique people. And the same thing I discovered being at the Kinnas HaShluchim in New York. What I saw was that organizations around the world are doing incredible work. So like I was saying, while they toned down the Kinnas and they had less workshops this year, I actually found that to be pleasant. What did they do? Instead of taking us on a bus to a convention center outside the neighborhood, they brought all the workshops into the neighborhood. Now, my relative said to me that was incredible because you had 5,000 some plus rabbis on the streets. Like it creates an avir, a ruach, an environment, a spirit. Instead of having dozens of workshops to choose from, they streamlined it. They had like 5 workshops at a time. That's it. You want to attend a class on education. You want to attend a class on care. You want to attend a class on fundraising. It was all streamlined. So you had 500, 600, maybe more people in a room where there was a lecture from professionals. I attended classes on fundraising, which got to sharpen the skills on. I attended classes on care. Let me tell you something else I discovered in the care classes. There's a lot of good work happening around the world, but I'm very proud of what we have going on here. Because of all the Chabad houses around the world that have lots of programs for the young and for young adults and for adult education, what I didn't see was anyone who has a seniors program like ours. Nobody's got a daily class with occupational therapy with Cynthia, or the breathing and stretching and yoga with Dr. Menucha, or please God, as our physiotherapy is going to start. Thank you. Or nobody's got a Rebbetzin Miriam Benishevitz teaching and giving their classes, or an Aviva Goldman as she used to, and a lunch every day. So I'm telling you, we got a pretty impressive program going on here because nobody, at least at the session I attended, with dozens of Chabad rabbis representing the entire world, from South to North America to Canada to all over the world, I didn't find anybody offering a program like ours. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I have a cousin in Israel who's doing something fairly similar to ours, but I was pretty proud. And the weekly food parcels that we give out. I heard of Chabad centers that give out for their holidays or give out, yes, Chaim. No worries. Feel good. I see other Chabad houses that are doing, food distribution or treats for the festivals. They give out menorahs for Hanukkah and shalach manas for Purim and matzah for Pesach. But none of them told me they give out food parcels every week like we do here. So I felt I was a little bit, chuffed that we have a good program going on. And I was very proud of it. Yes, very, very proud. So with that, thank you all. With that in mind, I still learned a lot at the Kinnos, and there's a lot we could implement and gain from. The programs were also streamlined, which is something new they do since COVID. Before COVID, you had to be at the conference, and if you weren't there, maybe some of the classes are recorded, but if it wasn't recorded, you can never hear that session again. Whereas what they did here was, not every rabbi in South Africa flew to New York. A lot did, especially since the keynote speaker was Rabbi Stern from Sydenham Shul. But for those who were here, they got to go into Zoom, like we're doing right now in our shiur, and whoever wanted could participate on Zoom and be part of the classes. Something else, so I like the idea that they streamlined it. It made it easier for me to decide. I got to say, every year, I sit there with the Kinnos booklet. I'm like, which set? I really want to go to that one, but I really want to go to that one. I really want to go to that one. This year was easier to make a decision. I attended the fundraising except for the care classes that they asked me to be part of to share some ideas. Yes, Miriam. Yeah. So I just want to say Chabad Hatzioda today is the Chabad House of Cape Town. Chabad South Africa.org is the Chabad of Johannesburg, this building. Yeah. Yeah, it's the same thing though, because we all plug into a main database. Yeah, and you can find a lot of the classes available there. On that note, something else that we do that a lot of the shluchim are asking for that's unique to us is our app. So for those who volunteer to help us on a Friday with our food parcel distribution, by the way, it's not about the food parcel, you should know. Even though I think we give a fairly nice hamper of food that I work hard to put together, but it's not about that. You know why we started that during COVID? A lot of people were lonely and isolated. We wanted they should get a visit. And that's why we do this. And you don't have to be young to go on to be a volunteer. Anyone here who wants to could join our volunteer corps, and a Friday can visit a few elderly people who you can encourage and uplift and spend some time with. So it's not about the food parcel, it's about the time that we spend with each other. But a lot of the shluchim were very impressed with the app that we got. How did that app come about? Well, as you know, besides for running Chabad Seniors Club, I have a shul in Santon. Now, I was in my contract, something interesting nobody knows. In my contract, when I came out here in 2009 to run the Chabad Seniors programs, it said that I would not be the rabbi of a shul because it would be distractive. It would be a disturbance to the program. Hence, I was happy with it. I never saw myself as a pulpit rabbi. Now, 2010, World Cup came. You guys remember World Cup? It was a good spirit. It was a great infusion. Remember, the Rand was probably at its greatest, at its peak in probably the last 20 years during the World Cup. And there was a real optimistic happiness and joy in this country during the World Cup, which I wish would have been extended. But unfortunately, I think if the government take an anti-Israel stance, sadly, it has its repercussions. As we read in the Parsha, I will bless those who bless you, and those who curse you will be cursed. Unfortunately. So, but there's still potential, and there's still opportunity for this country to change course. Whatever the case is, World Cup came in 2010, and Chabad House decided to open a satellite location in Santon Central because there were many visitors who were afraid to walk long distances to Santon Shul or to Chabad of Strathaven or any other shul, which would be a good half-hour, 45-minute walk. And when somebody's coming from overseas and not familiar with the terrain, so who did Chabad House turn to? Oh, Ari, you don't have a shul. Just for the World Cup, you're going to open a shul. Okay, just for the World Cup. So in 2010, we opened a shul in the heart of Santon at Village Walk Shopping Center. You remember that? Oh, that's right, Rennie. I used to share space with Rennie. Rennie was running the bookshop, and Amy was running the coffee shop. That's right. And her grandfather used to come here, Sali Gamzu of blessed memory. And I was running the shul. And we had a little shop across, and then on Friday, they'd leave me some goodies. And yeah, that was for the bracha, and that was the World Cup. And after the World Cup, we saw there's still visitors who come, and the rest is history because it's how many years later now? 13 and a half years later, and we still got the shul, and we've grown a little bit. So that's the story about our Santon Central shul, which I was never supposed to open, but 13 and a half years later, it's still going. So what happens? Who do we entertain? Who's our shul for? I mean, anyone's welcome. You're all welcome to come to the shul. But we mostly get visitors. That's who comes to our shul. Visitors, people who are visiting from overseas. And when visitors come, we are happy to host them for Shabbos. We give them meals. We have them for Shabbos. You know, it's a far walk to go to another shul. And we're happy for them to have minyanim and learn and daven and enjoy Shabbos meals with our family. We had a visitor who came and he liked what we're doing, and his company does high tech, and he created an app, and our app is probably one of the best apps out there for any delivery kind of company. Now, we're not a delivery company. We don't make money delivering food parcels, but the point is to visit people. And that app is an incredible app that many other rabbis are very impressed with. The guy who created it for us is happy to give it to any nonprofit organization who needs as well. So that's another interesting thing that we were able to give. By the way, you know, when you give, you get. So I certainly got a lot of inspiration as well. And the menorah story I'll share with you maybe next week, because that I think needs a class of its own. But what I will share with you today, one of the most inspiring moments besides for, at the banquet, was a young child, a kid. And I'm thinking of another story I heard as well. I'll tell you one more. A young kid, I think he's 10 years old, and he came up onto the stage. Did any of you watch his speech? This kid is from Sderot, southern Israel, right next to the border. That's right. He came on with his helmet and vest to show us what it looks like when he gets the siren, and the siren gives you 12 seconds. And he demonstrated to us. And he said, count with me. 1, 2, he counted all the way to 12. He told us to close our eyes. And of course, 12 seconds, that's what it takes to try to run and save your life. 12 seconds seems like a very short period of time. However, he also emphasized that 12 seconds is the time it takes to say a prayer. In fact, the prayer of Moda'ani, the first one we say in the morning. How many words are there in Moda'ani? Check. Moda'ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shechazarta bi nishmati v'chemla. How long does it take to put a smile on someone's face, to help someone with their bags, to help somebody cross the street, to do a kind act, to say a nice word, to do a good deed? 12 seconds. There's so many good things you could do in 12 seconds. And I thought that was a great speech that young boy said. And he emphasized, he showed us what it's like to live there. He lives with it. He had him, his father and grandfather. They were all together at the kinos on the stage. It was a revolving stage. The stage turned, which was quite nice. And that was something nice to hear his perspective about life in Sderot. I heard a story at one of the Fabrengans that stood out to me as well. And this story was the story about a family that during COVID, this family had to leave their city, Shenzhen, China, to come to, well, they thought they were going to go to Israel. It was February 2020. You remember February 2020? I think we were going about life. Everything was fine. That's called BC or BCE, before the COVID era. It was a different life. Remember it? Anyways, February 2020. There was a lot going on here at Chabad. I remember we were doing a lot of things. Nobody dreamed about COVID. But if you lived in China, it was affecting you. It started in Wuhan. In fact, we had a niece's wedding in New York in December 2019. So we went for that to spend Hanukkah 2019 in New York. And after Hanukkah, we were coming back to Joburg. And on the plane, all the Asian people were wearing masks already. And we were thinking, you think this, nothing to worry about, right? Asian people always wear masks, right? I remember I went to India in 2002 for Pesach. And when I arrived in India, what was the disease going on there? Was it foot and mouth or SARS it was called? SARS is still a disease here, right? But there it was a disease. It was an epidemic. And the people were all wearing masks. When we came, they took our temperature. It was foreign to me. Pardon? Anyways, this family, their name is Hennig. When February 2020 came and people were leaving China, their whole community was gone. Because like our Chabad house, in a sense, our shul in Santon is mostly a visitor's shul. Their shul in Shenzhen, China, was something similar, where they had an expat community. The people who were there as part of their business people. People who were there for, call it, that factories, businesses, whatever they do. And now, a lot of those people were picking up and going because they didn't want to be stuck in the COVID lockdowns that were starting in China. And the Hennig family had a choice. On one Erev Shabbos, they were told that their city was going to go into lockdown. And they thought they didn't want to be stuck there in China when they have no community left. So they locked up their Torahs and everything, and they booked tickets on Friday afternoon for a Saturday night flight. Matzei Shabbos. They had to pack very quickly. I don't think they left their house necessarily in the United States, and they went off on a Lufthansa flight heading to Israel with a stop in Frankfurt, thinking their next stop will be Tel Aviv. But as they got to Frankfurt, they were told, sorry, Israel is not going to let you in. Even though they were Israeli citizens, at that stage, Israel was afraid of anybody coming from China. They did not want COVID entering the country. You could imagine at that stage, it was indecisive. People didn't know yet what's going to happen, and they closed their doors on China. So now, this Chabad family who's serving at Shluchim in Shenzhen, China, they couldn't go home to Israel, where they were originally from. What are they going to do? Then they checked, they had visas still to America from a previous visit. So they decided to go to America. They have relatives there too. February, they crashed the house of some relatives. Brooklyn homes aren't all very big. It wasn't so easy for them, a family, just moving into other families' homes. And they spent the next few months, as COVID was becoming more of a reality, moving to different relatives' homes. It wasn't an easy situation. But their community in China just still hadn't returned to their home base. And this family, Chabad Shluchim, thinking they lost their mission, what are they going to do? But then, as 2021 began, some families started to return to China. And they realized their mission needed to resume. They needed to go back to China to continue their work. So what did they do? They booked tickets, they get a visa, and they're finally granted access to go back home to China. Well, they arrive in Beijing. You don't just get off a plane in 2021 like you do today. Remember those days? They check everyone's temperature. And the youngest child, 2-year-old, had a temperature, had fever. Well, the child and mom were taken to a COVID hospital where they were put basically in solitary confinement for 2 weeks. The family was taken to a COVID hotel, and she described how it wasn't so pleasant or easy living in a hospital room for 2 weeks, stuck in the claustrophobic space where their only entertainment was their phone, waiting until they were clear of any symptoms. They were very lucky that the Chabad in Beijing has a restaurant, which is, by the way, a South African restaurant, because the Rebbitzin in Beijing is from Johannesburg. She's one of the Lipskars. And they were, thank God, provided kosher meals, but it wasn't so easy. And then eventually, after a long ride back to their home city, they made it home. But before they could go in their city, they live in a gated community. You know what a gated community is? Like all of Joburg, gated communities. Well, they had a gated community, which is a place where expats live, basically. And, they have their certain rights to practice religion. Don't forget, China is still a communist country. And they had certain rights that are granted to them living in this particular neighborhood. But before they could get back in, the security guard said, "We're very sorry to inform you that all the homes in this community were burglarized, were invaded during COVID. There was some people who got clever and they robbed all the homes. We caught them, don't worry. But we can't let you into the house without the police. The police need to take fingerprints, they need to talk to you, they need to find out, they need to see what was stolen." So now they'll get the police, and the family comes to the house, escorted by the police. They look at the door, they're looking for signs of entry, of nothing. They come into the house, they see their same mess, the kids' clothes, the toys on the floor. They don't see any particular signs of theft, of burglary. They're looking, no, nothing. The police are quite surprised, they're shocked. They said, "We need to find out what happened. Every house in this property, in this neighborhood, was burglarized. Your house wasn't. What happened?" And they come back the next day with a report. They spoke with the burglars, the thieves, and they said as follows: we robbed every house here. But the one house we didn't was that one, because it had a sophisticated security system that we couldn't figure out. We couldn't figure out the security system, so we skipped their house. And what was the security system? The mezuzah. Sadly, at the Kinos, they have a resource fair. And at the resource fair last week, I got to see a new mezuzah cover. Because many people in Europe or even America and other places, are scared of displaying a mezuzah. So people are taking the mezuzahs down. So what did Chabad innovate? They came up with a mezuzah cover that doesn't look like a mezuzah cover. It looks like a doorbell. Hide the mezuzah in it. While there's something nice about that people could still keep the mezuzah up, it is sad and tragic that people feel that they have to take the mezuzahs down, unfortunately. But anyways, it's a nice protective case, and it was nice to see that at the Kinnos as somebody's innovation that they're selling. But I want to share with you one more story from this Hennig family. Rabbi Hennig related that during the February 2021 is the ladies' convention, which means always the men's convention is October, November, the weekend before Rosh Chodesh Kislev, because that's when the Rebbe in 1977 recuperated from a debilitating heart attack on Simchas Torah that year. And that was the precursor, the beginning of the Kinnos HaShluchim. And the ladies' conference, the Kinnos HaShluchais of all the ladies, the Rebbitzins of Chabad, takes place in February on the weekend of the Rebbitzins' Yortzeit. Rebbitzin Chayamushka, the Rebbe's wife. So, 2021 February, you couldn't travel yet. And they held the Kinnos online. It was a virtual conference. During the virtual conference, they were talking about the various places where there's shluchim, and they spoke about particularly those who are in remote locations, where it's that much more of a mesirat nefesh. It's a lot more of a self-sacrifice to be there. And Rabbi Hennig says his kids are watching this, and they say, we're so lucky that we're in a place that doesn't need so much mesirat nefesh. We're so lucky to be in a place where we have everything we need. The rabbi was thinking, he says, where they are, there's no other shul. There's no other kosher restaurant. There's no school. His kids literally are mesirat nefesh. They don't live in a Jewish community in the neighborhood where they have Jewish friends. The family is there to facilitate the needs of Jewish visitors. And yet these kids, they were thinking, maybe somebody in Siberia. And that's something else that I picked up on the Kinnos. That I'm very privileged and lucky as a family to live in a beautiful and spiritually rich Jewish community. Let me tell you, I discovered there are shluchim who live maybe 2 or 3 hours out of New York City. And they have a much harder time with kosher food, with education for their children, with reliable minyanim, with so many other aspects of Jewish life than we in Johannesburg. So many thousands of kilometers and a 16-hour minimum plane ride away. Because I booked in a different way, I booked on Emirates because it was cheaper, vitality points. So it was a much longer flight. To get to Australia, it took me 65 hours, 4 flights. To get to New York, from there, I think was 30 hours on a plane with a 3-hour layover in between. Not so bad, Nishka Frelech, let me tell you. It was fine to be on the Emirates. Is a wonderful airline. Good food, good kosher food with the South African Beth Din. In Dubai, they have South African Beth Din kosher. It was fine. But what I'm pointing out to all of us is we have a most beautiful community here in Joburg. And so, my friends, let us cherish, let's realize the privilege we have. On the buses, going to the Rebbe's Ohel or to the conference, I spoke with other shluchim in other locales, other places around the world. Indeed, we have it easy here in Joburg because we have such a beautiful and rich community with all the infrastructure one needs, from kosher food to schools and variety of schools and shuls and everything that one needs. We have it here. We are very, very lucky. And maybe tomorrow we could talk. I didn't get a chance to get into this topic yet, but please God, tomorrow I will. We're going to talk about the Jewish life back in Lithuania, in Der Hain. As South African Jewish community is primarily Litvak, right? A lot of Lithuanian Jews. I have a little secret to tell you, and that is that the Alter Rebbe, let me see if I can get him on the screen if you see the Alter Rebbe here. He was known as the Litvak. So even though he started the Chabad Hasidic movement, he was a Litvak. So tomorrow we'll talk about what life was like, what Jewish life was like in Lithuania, and why there was this disparity between the Vilna Gaon, the great luminary, teacher, genius, scholar, Talmud Chacham of Lithuania, the Vilna Gaon, and why he had let's call it a dispute with the Hasidic community. And we can understand the history of Lithuanian Jewry a little better. And this will be the great debate that we'll discuss tomorrow, the Hasidic Renaissance. And it's much deeper than what meets the eye. If you look at the screen, you might get a little bit of idea, because it had to do with this idea of divine transcendence versus divine immanence. What does that mean? What's this debate about? We'll talk about it tomorrow. In the meantime, let's remember that we are a wonderful community here. I'm glad to be back. It's good to be with you all. Let's enjoy the next 3 weeks here together until we take our break. And please come join us for as many shiurim as possible. Don't forget, after lunch now, we will have art therapy at 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. with Kim and Miriam, and you will take your used garbage, recycle it, and turn it into beautiful, beautiful art masterpieces. So don't miss the art class today, 1 to 3 p.m. after lunch. Next Sunday, next week, we will have Dr. Stern again, please God. Actually, I have to check. It's next Monday, the following one. But Dr. Stern's going to come here. He has a great topic. Let me just see what he's talking about. Give me a second. I want to share with you his topic. He told me he's going to talk about. Let's find it. And hold on a second, everyone. Dr. Stern. He's going to be, I'll give you the date of his talk. Just a sec. And Adam Stern. Dr. Adam Stern. He's going to be here at 12:15, Monday, the 4th of December. The next Monday, the following Monday. Monday, the 4th of December, his topic of discussion will be back pain. Back pain. Okay. Everyone enjoy lunch. Have a great day. See you all tomorrow. Thank you.